I'm Simon Hills. I'm label manager here at Axtone Records, which was a label set up by Axwell, who you might know from Swedish House Mafia, and as being Axwell.
Hey, I'm Stefano. I'm a music producer. I'm a nerd, like most of you. And I've been making music for a long time. I have a small label called Congaloid, and I've been releasing music on a bunch of labels in the last 10 years, more or less. And I work with Point Blank as well. And yeah, good to see you.
Hi, I'm Allan. I oversee and manage the label teams at Anjunabeats, Above and Beyond's record label, and I also work as an artist management at the artist management company, Involved Management, that we have, managing acts like Dusky, Lane 8, Anjunabeats, and Allan Bluestone.
Hi, I'm Kwame. I'm a music manager, and I'm also a consultant. And I also, you probably might have heard me at Point Blank at some stage, and that's me.
Cool. So the first question is pretty obvious. How do you break into the music industry? I mean, obviously it's not that simple. There's so many variables when it comes to this whole process. And it's not as simple as just having talent, which is the obvious answer. I mean, what trends have you guys spotted in your careers between people who've been successful in the music industry and people maybe who haven't?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, yes, obviously talent, but also what I've seen time and time again is people with some decent talent, but a really, really strong work ethic. So many times you just see it. There's people with plenty of talent, but they just don't have that fire in their belly, and they think, oh, I'm pretty good, I get the odd booking, I'm happy, I'm going to make it. But without that fire in your belly, look how many people there are just in this room. And in essence, yes, you can collaborate with each other, but in some ways you're competing with each other. And then with that in mind, yeah, you need to work hard.
I would say persistence and diversification are very, very important. And also taking a chance sometimes when inside your head you might be thinking, why am I doing this? But, and also gut instinct as well. So there's 4 there.
Like another key thing that I guess a lot of you are kind of tuned into, because you're part of a network, is kind of surrounding yourself with, with good people, with people who kind of understand music, who are passionate about music, and also people who understand the music industry and can, give you some perspective on how it works and what's needed to, sign a record, what's needed to, to get your music out there, and also just bounce ideas off and give you a bit of confidence in what you're doing. 'Cause it's very easy to just make music in a bubble, but unless you kind of find ways to get it out of there, it's not really going to have any impact.
Yes, I agree. I think being at the right place at the right time is also part of the talent. We all spend time in studio and it's fun, and we want to make something different, but having a look at what goes up. I mean, we for example, here we are in London, and it's kind of easier, to check out what's happening, what labels are cool or what not, what parties. But we have the internet, so keeping an eye on what's coming up, what labels are coming up, what surrounds us. That's also a talent, because in my experience, has been a very driving force. I mean, making music, obviously, 90% of the time. So putting the work down, being, having a strong work ethic. But then, if you are surrounded by people that are growing together with you, then you're going to grow. So that's also a talent, trying to be, with the right people, surrounded by the right crew, and that takes time as well. You have to look around, you have to be patient when other people don't want to talk to you, or you send demos and people don't want to reply. It's just because there is no time. Labels get so many demos, so many people, talented people. So being patient and try to surround, yourself with people like you, driven. That's also very, very important. And sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's talent, sometimes it's both. Most of the times it's both, but that's also very important.
Being in the right place at the right time is only ever in hindsight. So how do you put yourself in the right place at the right time, be everywhere all the time?
I guess the only way that you can put yourself there, in the right place is by having something to say, because there are only so many ways that you can impress a manager or a label. You know what I mean? Like if you keep sending demos which are not really good to labels, at some point labels are not going to listen to them anymore. And that goes for management, that goes for agency, that goes for everyone involved in the business. So by putting the work, by doing something valuable, by trying to make good music, and then knowing when is the right time to actually approach a label, approach a management, approach, so that's part of it is luck, part of it is actually kind of being very realistic and knowing when your music is actually, going into a certain direction, I guess, so people in the industry can listen to it and, help you if that's the case.
It sounds really obvious, but I think you've got to work out what it is that you're after. If what you want to do is you want your music to move an audience of people, in a club, right? And that's really what you want to do. To me, it's no use you doing that just sat in the confines of your bedroom. Go to the club and witness what makes people move and witness what bits you like about it. Do you know what I mean? So there's an element of, okay, what is it that I want? Not what everybody is telling me that I might need. What is it that I am actually into? Or if you're like, no, I don't like the club stuff. I like the more chilled stuff, the stuff that's played maybe in bars on a beach. We'll go to a bar on a beach and get involved at that level, Because I think a lot of the systems that we've got at the moment, we make music and there's a box in front of us and we do this. And social media is anti-social, really. So it's kind of, there's one of us talking to a bunch of people, and yet interaction has always been the thing musically that's driven some of the biggest and hugest and most massive acts in the world, but which involves either watching people move or watching an emotional response from people, but it involves interacting.
And for you guys who are getting demos all the time, you must get a lot of copycat stuff based on the artists either already on your roster or what's popular right now. I mean, it's kind of understandable that happens because there's so much pressure on people and to just make music, and they just, how much confidence do you have to be able to go, you know what, this is what I think is the right sound, I'm going to stick to it.
People hear what we release, say today, and then they think, oh, okay, I'm going to send you something that sounds like that. When in reality, I mean, we've had records that we've released by Axtone that he's been working on for 5, 6, 7 years. So that was what he was thinking about 7 years ago. So that's how far in, I mean, he wasn't thinking I'm going to release this in 7 years. I don't think he had that intention. But that's, that's also how long he takes sometimes to finish a track. And it is through what you're saying. It's through, Axe is playing 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people. And for him, until it's good enough, it's not being released. And that's part of it as well. It's taking that time to get something from 90%, which is what a lot of people can get a record to, and it sounds pretty good, and it does work to a point. But if you're going to move 100,000 people, a lot of, if you're at a festival, all those people aren't just there for you. So you've got to move people that might not have even heard of you, even if you are headlining these massive festivals. So you've got to make records that just work instantly. And that obviously takes time and experience and patience as well.
How finished does an artist have to be before you show interest in terms of how far on in their development should they be? Would you hear a demo and think, you know what, this isn't here yet production-wise, but I can hear the compositional skill?
If there's a kind of really high level of kind of musical content and emotion that comes through, and also ideas as well, innovative ideas that shine through, then if something's not quite there, you might persevere with it because it moves you. And I think as much as we live in very technologically driven studio focused music world, essentially music is there to move you, and you can hear past that. And sometimes on the Anjunabeats side, if we get so many demos that are produced great but musically are lacking that human touch, that emotion, and it can be quite refreshing when you get something that maybe isn't produced quite as well but has an idea or a melody that stands out. And we've had demos where we'll hear that and we'll be like, okay, maybe we take this and call up an engineer or a producer and either turn it into a collab or you know, or get some additional production on it?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, just in the last kind of 3 months, we've been working with a young producer from Sweden. He's 17, he's still at school, and it's a perfect example of someone. We heard the melodies immediately, we were hooked, although sonically it's not all there yet. But the great thing is, one of the it kind of touches on what we've already been talking about, in the sense that making club music, you need to be involved in clubs. The one thing that he hasn't learned yet is kind of sort of bad habits and trying to make sort of generic house drops. So that's one of the things that's the most exciting about him, is that his arrangements are not completely unique, but they're really different to sort of 99% of the things we've been sent. So that's really exciting to our ears, because most of the time we're just hearing sort of cookie cutter demos, and that's with the melodies and these weird arrangements, we're like, fucking hell, this is some next level shit. And he's 17 still living with his parents. It's great.
I mean, in terms of kind of, you know, finished product and sound quality, especially in dance music, you know, often kind of, you know, one man's kind of, you know, poorly produced can be another man's rustic or, you know, vintage sound, you know, being aware of some of those trends as well. You know, we've had some demos where, you know, on Dusky's label 17 Steps, where we've been like, yeah, it kind of sounds a bit too crusty and analog, and then we were like, but actually we kind of like that. You know, Fortet does that very well, and there are other examples of people that you know touch on that sound. So yeah, don't get boxed in by the people's boxes. You know, like your sound, whatever form it takes, may kind of fit somewhere where, you know, it might not fit other people's.
Yeah, and you touched on your sound. I wanted to ask all of you guys about what that actually means, because a lot of the time people give the advice of, oh, just find your sound, or be original, or don't follow the trends, but the antithesis of that is just basically just could be anything at all. So what advice would you give people who are actually trying to be original, but obviously you don't want to hear like, you know, John Cage is pretty original, but you probably wouldn't play that in a club, so
I'm like,
where do you draw the line?
My thing is, listen to everything and then listen to nothing. I honestly, a lot of the time, I'm like, listen, go out, you know, it's almost like fishing, right? So it's like, you go, you chuck the net out into the sea, and then you pull everything in, and then what have you got? You got a boot, a this, a that, you know, a dog biscuit, a such and such, whatever. And then you're like, actually, no, salmon's what I'm after. That's it. So all I'm saying is go out, consume, and then starve. And then somewhere in the starvation, there'll be a light. And generally, that's what it is that you are.
A lot of the interviews that we do, the common theme is that big track that an artist had was always, for want of a better word, a mistake, or they weren't trying to do something, and that's kind of the common trend, it seems.
Well, to me, as a nerd, it all has to come up at the right time, in the sense that, you know, when you first start making music, you do it for yourself, you try to follow maybe a trend or try to be signed on a certain label, so you try to have a sound, but then if you're lucky, you get to be original somehow, and then you get signed, and then you start getting into the machine. And then the more you get into the machine, the more you get into the business side of you, the more you get that you want to play more shows, you want to be more involved with some labels. Therefore, strangely enough, this whole creative part kind of gets, it gets a little less important. And if you're not careful, but this happens to a lot of people. It has happened to me, and it has happened to many producers I know. The more you get into this game, the more you get to play shows, the more you get to be out there and get good money for remixes and stuff, the less you experiment. Therefore, at some point, you are in this weird moment where you do have hype, you do have shows, you do work with a great manager, with a great agency, but somehow you're not saying anything different. Whereas maybe at the beginning you were trying to make a sound, but because it's trial, you know what I mean? Like you don't have much experience, you might end up with a happy accident of something good, something valuable, by fishing, by going out, listening to stuff. Then, I don't know, to me, after a few years, it kind of has to click, and everybody arrives at a different time. Some producers are very, very good, and they keep in mind that they want to be different, they want to be something. But it's very easy to get caught into the whole business side, especially when you start seeing money, when you start traveling. You're thinking, right, if I keep doing this sort of remixes, I'm cool. I make this kind of money every year. These labels like me. I get a mix mag or a DJ mag, page every now and then. The truth is that it's very detrimental to what you do. But you have to realize it at your own time. You know what I mean? And when you go back to just the drawing board, when you go back to just being like, right, I'm gonna take a week or 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever just to actually develop sound, to go around and fish, to go around and check out stuff and see what works for me, then you're different. Then that's when actually the cool labels get interested about you again. You know what I mean? You kind of lose this a bit when you are successful, in the sense that when you start touring and stuff, you kind of forget about this. You kind of go along with more remixes, more stuff, and then you don't experiment anymore. And then after 1, 2, 3, 5 years, you're still doing well. You're still making your money. Your name is out there, but as an artist, you feel like, what am I doing? Why am I not sitting just down and doing stuff? That's the risk, in my opinion.
I mean, I'd kind of agree with a lot of that, but I'd also say I don't think a lot of the, a lot of those values are kind of mutually exclusive. Like I think, you can, and it's tricky, but as an artist, you can hold different values. One of which might be, I want to, build and connect with my fan base, and that fan base may expect certain things. But on the other hand, you could also hold the value, I want to do interesting, innovative, and experimental things. And it can be quite hard to marry those values, but it's definitely not impossible. And I actually think, with in terms of artist development and building acts, once you've got yourself in that position of success, it can be the most interesting when the acts manage to do that, whether through guidance or their own artistic skill.
No, I agree with you. When they go together, that's when you have a good artist. That's when you get a good development. That's when you get good albums. That's when a label or a management works well. But as an artist, as a producer, it has to click in your own head at your own time. You know what I mean? So sometimes it clicks from the very beginning, and you just keep building up and keep doing your thing, and your thing happens to be what your fans love, and then that's all good. But some other times it takes some times of doing records that they don't really do well, and then get some weird moments, and then you realize, right, I've got a fan base. I want to please that fan base because I built it over years and years of being in a room, experimenting. But at the same time, I gotta have to say something, as the whole beginning of this was being different, having something to say.
Maybe what you were getting at, you were kind of losing perspective on what is the most important thing, which ultimately is the music. I mean, time and time again, you sort of see emerging artists, and they kind of concentrate. They think that perhaps if you've got a really good social media game, that's what's going to kind of make you really, really big. And of course, having a good social media game can accentuate things, and people can buy into you through that. But you have to, ultimately, in my opinion, and have the music has to be, first and foremost, has to be as good as it can possibly be. Because without that, you just, you've got nothing really.
I think it all depends on what market, again, you're going for first. I think if early adopters are really important to you, and when I say early adopters, I mean, let's look at a bottle, right? And we look at early adopters as being this bit. And imagine this was, say, and I'm not sponsored by them, but Coca-Cola. We all know that, the first bit of the Coca-Cola is the bit that generally it tastes great, right? But you kind of get here, and it's kind of, if you're passing it around, it's backwash, right? So the middle bit here is kind of like, this is the kind of central sort of big audience. It depends on whether you're aiming your music straight for here, right? Or whether you're aiming for these people here. These people here are like early adopters. Early adopters, they're after almost like a different thing from these people, totally. Their thing is, actually, they would rather that you didn't have 50,000 people on your Facebook and 50,000 followers on Twitter and blah, because for them, that means that their job is gone. They're like, well, I haven't discovered you, so I'm not interested. But yet, and I think this is really important, leaving enough time for those people to discover it is really, really, really important.
And also, especially in dance music, where it can be so fickle, your reputation, what's cool and what's not cool, and if you're seen as going mainstream, can backfire.
And I think that rush to get to the end is really important as well, because it's almost like, especially in dance music, it's like wacky races. I say, you've got all these cars, they set off, they're trying to get to the end as quick as possible. They're using all these tricks, and whether it's social media or hype or just PRing themselves endlessly, and they all just fall away. And it's the people that hang back, use their brain, connect with their fan base in a deeper way, incubate those early adopters so they feel like there's something there. They're the ones that kind of build the longest lasting fan bases, I think. And I think that's what a lot of artist managers aim to do.
And how much attention do you guys pay to social media numbers when you get a demo? I mean, it must be tempting to just, probably without even thinking, the first thing you'll do is, Google the sky. It sounds pretty cool, I'll just go. And then you get to their Facebook page and they've got 70 likes and 60 of them are their family. Does that affect things, even subconsciously?
It is important, because it's one of those things. It's a measure of a fan base. But how true is that fan base, I guess, is the question you have to ask. It's like everything. You can't take everything at face value. Everything is important on one level, but you have to be looking the level beyond.
And in terms of general marketing, how much time would you recommend someone spends on that when they're just sending out demos?
If you're at that point when you're sending your music to demo to A&Rs and maybe managers, yes, a decent press shot might be nice, but really, these guys, it's all about what the music sounds like, I think.
So, we covered some of these things already, but I just want to ask you guys individually, what are the biggest mistakes you see where you go, mate, like when it just comes in, you're just like, the most common things that you're seeing amateur producers or producers who are sending you demos make?
I mean, the amount of times I get a demo come through and basically the first line is, this isn't finished.
Oh,
it's not finished, it's not mastered,
and
it needs a top line. I'm like, well,
what are you doing?
I'm not listening to it.
From my point of view, being the guy that sends music out, I don't know. To me, the mistake, it's kind of to send over too much music, obviously, most of my friends are music producers, we tend to surround ourselves with people like us, and we can talk about modular synths all night long. And so I visit people's studios and people come to my studio every day, and like you sometimes you meet your friends, and some of them are doing pretty well. They release, they tour around. They're good producers, and then they come up sometimes to my studio with a USB key with 15 tracks. Some of them unfinished, some of them finished or whatever. But they want to bring it out so much. They want to sign it on that particular label so much because that label is going to mean whatever, an Asian tour or whatever it is that particular moment it is. I was doing that as well, to be honest. Again, when you are in that circle, before you realize, before it clicks, you tend to, whatever comes out of your computer, because you're doing it, because pretty much at some point you can release almost everything that you want, because if a big label doesn't want it, there is going to be a smaller label that wants it because on the back of another record you made that was successful. So the mistake is actually to just think, right, I finished this song, it's good enough, I have a profile, I can put it out, and then you start piling up stuff, which is not necessarily bad, but it's average.
One final piece of advice for any producers and artists, bands in the room?
Just have fun, really. If it's not fun, why doing it, really? I mean, it can be, from our point of view, it can be really miserable, it can be really lonely and solitary, or it can be amazing. You travel and you get all you want. So try to have fun, because otherwise, there's more the time that you're trying and struggling than the time that you're actually then doing something. And even when you're doing well, you're going to be struggling because you're always going to think in an artistic point of view, or you're going to look at someone else, whatever. So it's the point for me, at least, is try to keep it fun, because it's a very solitary job to be in a room surrounded by stuff, making music. So.
Mine's not as jolly as his advice.
Don't have fun. Yeah.
Don't have fun. Just be patient, and if you're good enough, it'll happen for you. But you just got to work hard, and don't try tricks or short-circuiting things, because if you want to have a decent career and be in there for the long term, then just work hard and like I say, be patient. It'll happen.
I would say kind of learn from your mistakes and sort of be dynamic. I mean, as you kind of alluded to, there are so many. It's an exciting time. You know, the rules have changed in a lot of ways, and there are so many different ways to break as an artist. There's so many different places for songs to get noticed, to be exploited, and I think yes, being aware of that and kind of not giving up at the first hurdles are kind of really important.
I would say the inner voice, I think, is a very, very important thing, a really important thing. And I think sometimes, you know, the inner voice might be sat on your shoulder or might be whispering something to you. And I think hearing that inner voice is so important. And all I would say is learn to appreciate and listen to your inner voice.